Thanks, MR. All right. Hello. Welcome to our back to school workshop with CodeHS, our webinar. We are going over how to use blended learning with CodeHS, and I am your PD specialist here at CodeHS, as well as MR in the background, dropping in links into the chat and also answering any questions that you have. And so let's get started. So just in case, if you do not have a CodeHS account, we do want you to go ahead and sign up. MR has dropped that link into the chat, and that link will just ask you a couple of questions, and then you'll have a teacher account. If you do have an account, you can just go ahead and go to codehs.com and sign in or log in so that you can access some of the materials. Here are our goals for today and access to the slides. And MR will drop those into the chat in a moment. But if you go to codehs.com/blended_learning, that will also take you to the slides so that you have access to them. So here are our goals for today. We will understand more about the blending learning model. We will consider some options for transitioning into the blended learning model, as well as discover tools and instructional strategies in using the CodeHS platform that work well with the blended learning model. So it's always great to at least start off with what the item that we're talking about today is. So what is blended learning? So this is a brief description and a visual to try to match up what blending learning is. So it's a shift of traditional instructional delivery that combines online digital media with traditional classroom methods. So if you have not used the blending learning model in the past, it's pretty much taking what you've done with your face-to-face learning, but integrating the online learning in it, and you end up with a blend. So that's why this little bubble visual is there. So here are some things that you want to consider when using the blended learning model. 3 components: your face-to-face active learning activities, your bite-sized digital learning objects, or pretty much what are you bringing from online. You do want them to try to be bite-sized so that they don't take up too much time, and also the structure of independent learning guided by your face-to-face learning. So you want to think about what activities are you doing face-to-face, what activities are online, and what activities are independently guided for the students to learn. And here are 3 other things that you do want to decide on. Is you want to consider your pacing, your place, and your path. So when we talk about pacing, we are talking about, well, are you using online learning? Are you using online learning, and is it mostly going to be a self-paced online learning model? Because that is possible in CodeHS. Are students where students can set their own pace and work on their own material and their own speed? Do you have class goals and checkpoints to provide structure? So these are some things that you want to think about with your pacing. You also want to think about place. Learn almost anywhere. So if you are using the blended learning model, especially with CodeHS, we can use this platform anywhere as long as you have the internet, as well as, where are students also learning in the classroom, outside, at home, in the library, a community center, things like that. And then we want to think about path. So what is our focus? We want to focus on topics that are do you want to focus on things that are more interesting or difficult? Also thinking about revisiting tricky material when you're looking at your pacing, and introducing topics of interest for different students. So these are things that you want to consider when providing a blending learning model. So blended learning with CodeHS, we want to talk about content delivery. So if you don't know our platform by now, I do want to just jump in, just because connecting the dots with CodeHS as well as blended learning. I think it's a visual thing. So I am actually going to jump into my demo section to just talk about how the assignments are already modeled and how that intertwines with blending learning. So by default, most courses and course content that you grab from CodeHS starts off with a video or a slide presentation. You normally have both options. And so that is, your first intro to how you want to blend this content. So we have, let's say, I'll go into programming with Carol and jump into our first lesson. If you notice, we have this video and I press preview. Students and teachers have access to this content, but when you're deciding on what you want to do with this video, these are some things that you want to consider. Do you watch it individually? Do students watch it individually? Do you watch it at class? Watch it as a class? Do you watch it at home? Do you watch it in small groups? And then, thinking about incorporating lectures. So when do you as a teacher teach the content? So if you've never noticed this before, as a teacher and as a student, you can go up here when you're in the video, you can click on slides and it will switch over to the slide deck. And you could either have your students or you as a teacher go over the slides and teach that as a lecture instead. So these are quick ways that you can get into using blended learning with CodeHS. So how can we manage a blended learning classroom? And if you have any questions, please let me know. You can just go ahead and drop them into the chat. You do have the ability to chat with us and just let us know. So how can we manage a blended learning classroom? So here are some things to consider when building a digital classroom. So we have 4 components: sharing information, facilitating discussion, collaboration, and student creation. And this is just one approach to blended learning. There are different approaches that you can take. These are just things that we have noticed that work well in our platform, and hopefully we'll brainstorm ideas for your classroom. So let's talk about sharing information. So when we talk about sharing information, well, we have the CodeHS lesson content, which I've mentioned before. Here we have a lesson programming with Carol, and we have the slides or the video, as well as a check for understanding quiz, an example, and 2 exercises for students to practice on. And so how are we delivering our content? You have in CodeHS the ability to add your own content as well as videos and slides. And I actually want to just briefly show you where that is, just to connect the dots if you want to try this tomorrow. When you're in your section or course, so in order to give students content, you have to create a course and then add sections to your course. And those sections are pretty much your class periods so that students can enroll into the course. Once they enroll, you have access to changing the assignments and modifying different things. And this is also free and available for teachers, even if you're on pro or not. When you're in your assignment section, you can click this little add button, and this will allow you to add an assignment, a lesson, a module, or existing content from your sandbox, the course catalog, or this new place called the project catalog. And I will just click on assignment just so that you can see. When you click on adding an assignment here, it will ask you, well, where do you want to add this content, which module and lesson? And then you'll give your assignment type, assignment title, give it a test, press create. And here is where you can add different types of content. For the example that I'm showing for my presentation, that would be embedding a video. So this is very easy for you to do. You can just click on it and then it will ask you for the URL link for uploading your video to CodeHS. So yes, you can add your own lesson content, your own videos, finding other resources and information from the internet. So we have like podcasts and blogs. And if I had to choose an assignment type, I would probably say to use probably article or notes to share that information. So these are all the different assignment types that you can use to add more to your course for blended learning. And we also have announcements and feedback. So giving feedback is also another way of sharing information, because a student can be going a specific direction independently, but you might need to direct them or help them along the way. Announcements are also available in CodeHS. There are a few ways to get there, but I think the easiest way to get there is on the roster, which is the main page of a section. And there is an announcements box or button down here above your student roster. So you can do announcements in CodeHS as well. All right, we want to also facilitate discussion. So for blended learning, what does that look like? So outside of the platform, you can grab videos, you can have shared docs, you can do conference calls via Zoom or Google Meet. And you can also embed these shared docs if you would like. If you have Google Docs, for example, I like to use Google Docs in the assignment type titled article as well, or you can do it as an embed. And we also have in the assignment types the option to do free response questions for student reflection. So you can also facilitate discussion using a free response question inside of the actual platform, or you can embed other activities to facilitate discussion, such as like a Padlet. Padlets work well, and we use them a lot on the PD team actually to facilitate discussion. Let's talk about collaboration. So collaboration, there are many ways to collaborate in CodeHS. The main one that we highlight is using the sandbox. The sandbox is a space where students and teachers can create any type of coding that they want. So for example, let's say they're taking a course that is specifically about Python. All of the activities in that course will be only using the Python editor. However, let's say they wanted to explore HTML or JavaScript, you can go over to the sandbox and create a JavaScript editor space for you to write code in JavaScript. And I see a question in the chat. How much of this content is protected from reuse outside of the organization accounts? Uploaded content. So I do believe the answer is if you're on a free account, when you create assignments, by default, they get added to the assignment bank, and you will get the recording at the end of the webinar. Yes. So if you're on the free account, you can't control how your content, it just goes into this bank of lessons or activities. But if you are on a pro account, you can not push it there. So you have more control if you're on a pro account. So I just want to show you where the sandbox is, just in case if you've never seen it. For both students and teachers, on the top next to our CodeHS logo, there is the sandbox here. And so you or students can also click on the sandbox and create a program here. And when you create a program, this is what I was saying before, you get to choose any program type that you want. So it's more of a space for you to play. As a teacher, if you have students enrolled in your classes, you can also view all of their codes in their sandbox as well. So there would be a button here, and it will show you based off of the enrollment of your sections, all of your students' sandboxes as well. And you can, I mentioned this before, in the add button, you can also, let's say you create a sandbox example or exercise, you can port that into your course as well. And the other thing we wanted to highlight about the sandbox is the fact that you can collaborate in it. So I just have a sample sandbox here set up already. And if I click on either share or the little person icon on the left, there is a way for me to activate collaboration, share out this link to students, and then they can activate this space just as if it was a Google Doc, and they can code together. And they can disable collaboration. The person who initiated it can disable it. Even if the student walks away and keeps it on, it'll stay on so that it works just like kind of a Google Doc. So that's another form of collaboration in the sandbox. And here are some external options. I did mention Padlet, there's Jamboard, and just a regular, whiteboard apps. So you can also embed some of these things or just do collaboration separately. So let's talk about student creation. So students can still create on the sandbox, but there is another option where students can use these things called pages or CodeHS.me pages. That is located here. It's creating pretty much a homepage, and it's also a great opportunity for students to create portfolios. It's just an open space for students to create like a website, and they can post up their codes there if they would like. There's another way of sharing student creation that I do want to show, and that is whenever you're in an activity. And actually I'll jump to, I guess I'll do the sandbox one. When you're in an activity, any student and teacher can go to more and then go to share. And then there will be different options for sharing your program. So you can either share with the URL or share via social media, and you can control if the code is showed or if this is public. And that one, once again, was in more under share. All right. So let's talk about transitioning from traditional classroom to a digital classroom. So these are some things that you want to consider. The first thing is to remember that not all of your classroom routines need to transition to the digital learning side. The thing I would say about this is, right, like you don't need to reinvent the wheel for everything. It's just modifying and changing some of the things that you do in the classroom to make them digital and more independent for students to have more of a blended learning model. So here are some strategies. You can start mixing up some of your online and offline activities. And if I wanted to point something that is very easy for you to do right away in the CodeHS platform is if you have access for the free accounts, you have access to the first 5 or 10 lessons in just want to go back to visually show you this. Lesson plans. And if you have access to lesson plans, if you have Pro, then you have access to all of the lesson plans. You can see handouts, and handouts are a great opportunity for you to do offline activities. So I just wanted to show that to you. In assignments, you'll see this little button for each lesson. That's our lesson plan. It's a maroon button with a paper. And so inside the lesson plan, if I open it up, not all lesson plans, but some do have the space for you to have handouts that you can have students use offline. So that's a great way to have an offline thing right away. All right. So we can also mix up group and individual activities. I think something interesting that you can do is have the students teach themselves or teach individual groups or teach us a specific section. It's an interesting thing to have students cover. You can set goals and expectations for individual work. I think that's very important, because even if you give the students the ability to work individually, if you don't set goals or expectations, they'll kind of do anything, or they might not feel motivated to complete whatever you have them doing. So you can also consider partner and group discussions for offline. After an online activity, you can do pair programming, you can differentiate instruction. Pair programming, just to go back to that, that's a specific concept where you have two people working together to program an activity, and each person has a different role. And I can drop that in the chat or add the link to the presentation as well, so that you can see exactly what pair programming is. But that is a great strategy for blended learning. All right, let's talk about some more instructional strategies. These are specific to different concepts. So on the left side, this is the concept that we're trying to accomplish. And on the right side, these are some things that you can do to accomplish that concept. So on the left, we have add your own content to the coding LMS. I mentioned that before. You can simply just go to assignments for your class and press the add button to add content. And there's different activity types. And some of those I mentioned before: Google Docs, slides, Padlets, anything that can be embedded. You can make your own quizzes, you can write your own text, and you can also make your own exercises. So the other things we have: add your own questions. Like I mentioned before, there is a quiz option. I'll visually show it to you. If I add an assignment, just go to the first place at the bottom. There is an assignment type for quizzes, so you can make multiple choice quizzes for your students to take. This is a pretty cool thing. If you're looking for more advanced things, you can also use Markdown in there so that your code actually looks like code. So yeah. And here are some other ideas: frequent FRQs, exercises, exams, things like that. So you can also do gamification strategies. You can award badges to students for reaching milestones. You can do virtual rewards. We do have a badge section in CodeHS, but if you're on the free plan, you only get one badge. And if you're on a pro, you get unlimited badges, and you can award your students badges if you're into the badge thing. If you want to try other badges prior to teaching at CodeHS, I've also done, and I got to think about the link, but there is a link for doing badges with Google Sheets as well. That is also cool. And to stay connected, you can do communication tools. So there is a way to have conversations with your students in an actual exercise. So you can also have conversations in an exercise for your students. If I go to the More tab again, you have conversations here. And so students can go back and forth with you about getting help for their code. All right, I know we're running out of time, but we're almost at the end. So here are a few more. You have your individual accountability before collaboration. Thoughts on that. We have collaborative group ideas, and as well as think, pair, share ideas for you to look at. All right. Last but not least, we have our virtual pair programming. Like I mentioned before, you can do peer feedback on code, as well as, and I've mentioned the share link too. So that's a great thing that it's connected to peer feedback. And you can also consider some of the communication strategies as well. So virtual office hours, establishing a routine for how to provide feedback and respond to students. So I will say, even though we do have this conversations tab in teaching in regular classes, I've had to set this in my norms for my students to go back in and check the conversation, and getting them to send me something in the conversations versus sending me an email. So this is something that you would have to put in your routines. All right. So here are just a couple of other resources that you can consider. Some of these were already mentioned, but Pear Deck is also a great one. I like quizzes with the extra Z's. I probably use that the most in my classrooms for blended learning and also integrating it with CodeHS. And it's here for assessment apps. Here are some whiteboarding apps, some assessment apps, and video recording options. Loom, I use a lot. Quizzes, Formative, I've tried. So there are a lot of different things that you can do. And since we're wrapping up, here are our last bit of webinars for the back to school. We have integrating coding across subjects on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, as well as cheat detection on Thursday. You can sign up to these webinars by going to codehs.com/webinars. We'll also drop it into the chat. And then we have some other ways to get involved, which are here. So you can become a CodeHS certified educator. You can attend some of the free PDs that we've mentioned. We have a Slack channel. We have some micro credentials you can earn. We have a Facebook group, as well as just following us on our social media platforms. And if your district or school is interested in learning more about Getting Pro or any of our other features, you can click on that first link that MR dropped in for more information. Click Learn More, and CodeHS will get back to you. And that's it. We're at the end. We have 2 more minutes, so I'll hang out here if there are any questions about what we went over, or if you wanted to visually see where you can find a specific tool. But thank you for attending today's session.